Is there a limit to how much Mahoraga can adapt? Let's talk about it. All right, so first of all, shout out to Turbo for asking this question. Do we know exactly how many times Mahoraga can adapt? And this is a subject that has been often discussed in the JJK fandom, largely because we don't have a hard answer to this. Like a lot of things in JJK, Gege left it up to our own interpretation and analysis. And I'm happy to share my 2 cents, but before we do, let's hear what Turbo has to say. And she says that she's always understood it as the eight-handed wheel above his head means he can only adapt 8 times before he runs out. This would also give Ten Shadows users a realistic way to beat him by having Mahoraga adapt to the first 8 Shikigami and then using the ninth in order to defeat him, one that he wouldn't be able to adapt to. So thoughts on this theory? What's my take on Maho's adaptation? All right, first of all, that's an insanely cool theory. I've heard people speculate before that Mahoraga can only adapt a total of 8 times due to the amount of spokes on the wheel, but I've never heard anybody tie it to the number of Shikigami like that, so I think that's awesome. But personally, I don't think that's the case. I think Mahoraga could adapt to a million things. I don't think there's a limit on what he can adapt to. And primarily, I think that due to kind of real life lore based on what his character design is all about, specifically the Dharma Chakra wheel itself. So we're going to get into that, but I also think there's a little bit of evidence from the manga itself that would point more towards a limitless number of adaptations than the hard and fast 8 number. All right, first of all, Mahoraga's Dharma Chakra wheel is based on the real-life Dharma Chakra wheel, which is a massive symbol in Buddhism, which, as I'm sure you know, Gege has Buddhism's fingerprints all over this manga. And you can look this up if you want like the more in-depth, nuanced explanation, but essentially what it represents is nirvana, enlightenment. The 8 spokes are representative of the eightfold path in order to reach enlightenment. And you got to remember it's divine General Mahoraga. And divinity, enlightenment, nirvana, these things are the antithesis of having limitations. And with those things being so integral to Mahoraga's design, I got to feel like that's what Gege was trying to evoke. I mean, the man's got aura, you got to admit. Plus, no user of the Ten Shadows has ever been able to tame him. I got to imagine at least some of them probably had the other 9 Shikigami tamed, so I just think it would make more sense for him to have no limit to the adaptations and just be that built different. Now, like I said, there's a little bit in the manga I can point to, but that is going to contain massive spoilers for anybody that's not caught up on the manga. So for any of my anime onlys that stayed this far, you might want to scroll away now. Okay, so in the Gojo versus Sukuna fight, we find out a lot about the adaptation, and I'm going to try not to get too yappy here, but one of the things we found out is that the wheel can spin multiple times in order to just adapt to a singular phenomena. And I'm not saying Turbo thought this, but I have seen some people say that they think it's only 8 total adaptations, that means the wheel will only spin 8 times. This proves that untrue, but I guess you could still say the wheel can spin a million times, but you can still only adapt to 8 total things. I again don't think that's the case because of how we saw it operate here. It did not adapt to Gojo's Limitless in its entirety. It could only adapt to one phenomena at a time, meaning it had to adapt to infinity, it had to adapt to red separately, it would have had to adapt to purple, and it adapted to unlimited void separately. So that's, 4 or 5 adaptations from a singular curse technique. And if all that happens, then he's only got 3 left, right? And I just don't think that makes sense for Mahoraga because one, I feel like Gojo's 6 Eyes could have deduced that, and that maybe would have became part of his game plan, being like, okay, I got to get Mahoraga to adapt to 3 more things, and then I'll use red because it'll be out of options, right? Nor did we see Sukuna kind of sweating that possibility at all. He was never worried about running out of potential adaptations. Anyways, that's my 2 cents. I've yappingtoned enough on this. Like I mentioned, we don't have a hard answer to this question, so I could be completely wrong, and it could be a hard cap at 8 adaptations. So y'all let me know your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.